and let go to grab his handcuffs, and I booked and I ran, barefooted and shirtless. I ran 20 something miles that night through pine forest. I was picking thorns out of my scalp for about a month afterward. I was completely cut up. I ran into a barbed wire fence and split this nipple wide.
For those that don't even know, how did you even become what you become today? What was the running from the cops to all that kind of stuff? I didn't believe it when I first heard it.
I guess it's the first time I went to college, UGA, right out of high school, on 2 full ride academic scholarships. I got kicked out the first year for mushrooms, marijuana, and hash oil. I got kicked out there. I always got in trouble with the law. I was asleep in my dorm room when they came and got me that time. And the second time I was sitting out by the lake at Clark Hill, just drinking beer and smoking weed, and the DNR pulled up on me in a boat. They had been watching us with binoculars a half mile out in the lagoon. There was nobody around us for miles. Like this would be called minding your own fucking business in most parts of the world, but not in the great state of South Carolina. I was always out on bond, probation, something like that. One night at the same lake in a different place, we were just drinking over a fire on the way back. We were on these little dirt roads. I wound up going really fast, lost control of the vehicle, going around a curve, hitting an embankment, and flipped 3 times, landed on the hood. They called the police, and everybody showed up there. There were 5 cop cars, an ambulance, a fire truck. I was driving. They gave me a breathalyzer. I blew a .06 under the legal limit, but I was 19, so they went to take me to jail. He had me up against the cop car like that, and he let go to grab his handcuffs, and I booked and I ran, barefooted and shirtless. I ran 20 something miles that night through pine forest. I was picking thorns out of my scalp for about a month afterward. I was completely cut up. I ran into a barbed wire fence and split this nipple wide open, but I got away, and nobody saw me for almost 2 years. It was at that time that I started working construction work because that was in 2008. I didn't have a license. I didn't have an ID. I didn't have a car, a pair of shoes, nothing. Hard time to make $1 in 2008. But that's where I began working construction. Anyways, I ran from the police a few more times. I've run from them 5 times. I've only been caught twice. And that's only because they have radios. I like to say, you bunch of fat, sorry motherfuckers would never catch me without a radio. To all my police friends out there, I just wish they'd get a real fucking job. The dumbest, sorriest, laziest bunch out there. Anyways, now they have ICE, so there are some shittier ones. Anyways, don't edit any of that out. They all need to know they suck giant dick. All right. But they caught me 2 days after my 21st birthday. I wound up doing 2.5 years in prison as a 5'4" white boy in Reedsville, Georgia. Rogers State
Wow.
Prison, right across the street from where they filmed The Longest Yard. That's where, me and Senor, I taught myself Spanish when I was in prison, taught myself Greek, translated Matthew and Mark from Greek into English to better understand it. I was not idle in that time, but I always mention those things because I learned construction when I was on the run from the law and Spanish when I was in prison. The irony of building something in a Spanish speaking country is not lost on me as I sit
Mm-hmm.
here today.
Yeah.
When I got out of prison on August 9, 2010, with $50 in the clothes on my back, and I've repaid more than that debt. From there, I started working. I had no electrical experience at that time. I took a job making $8 an hour at Rob Zapata's Electric. He gave me a chance. I learned electrical work. I took another job making $12 an hour remodeling entire bathrooms by myself. From there, I started my own business and went out on my own. Once again, just working on houses. Started doing contract work for a large property holdings company named Eshoff Properties. They were good to me. And from there, I bought my first house, my second house,
Wow.
third house. And it just kept going. Basically, if I look back on it, I just went in there where somebody was doing something, and after a short period of time, understood what they were doing far better than them. I started doing electrical. Now look at me. Then I did that for about 12 years. It was in May of 22. I've been married. I had 2 kids. I owned 70 something houses. I had custom designed the perfect house for me and my little family out there in Hepzibah on right about 6 acres, and a 2,200 square foot house that I gutted and custom designed. I put a tankless electric water heater in the attic right above that giant shower that was 6 foot across and 4 foot wide. bench seat, 2 shower heads, 4-foot soapbox with a window. Did this house really nicely. Built a gym. Decided what I was going to do next. A few weeks later, I went and bought a van. El Suave. Paid $20,000 for that van. It was already a camper. It didn't have any solar. It didn't have anything. That's where I started with solar energy. I had to figure out how to put solar in a van, so I built my own solar generator in a Pelican hard case and stuffed it in there. Told society they could fuck off. And I left. And I hadn't been back. And so I took off and I headed out across the country. I bought a house all the way out in Washington State, 9 minutes from the beach and 15 minutes from Olympic National Park in a little town called Sequim, Washington. I call it Squish. But I was done, man. I really was done with society. I still am. I left and was driving across the country. I had planned to run 5 unsupported ultra marathons along the way. I was a competitive runner. I've won a couple 40 and 50 mile foot races in the mountains. You can Google Joe Felz running and see all my race results in Ultra Run magazine. If people think I'm kidding, but I left and I downloaded a navigational app known as Tinder, and that's where you go. You use Tinder to figure out where you're going to go next. I remember I worked in that van for 2 weeks in August in the hot sun, sweating my ass off, 8-9 hours a day. The day I left 12 years on the day that I got out of prison. I left on 8/10/22.
Wow.
Wow.
Set off as a self-made millionaire, heartbroken, had done everything for everybody, and had gotten nothing but shit in return. I left. I drove all the way to Kentucky, Land of the Lakes Recreational Center, and slept. I drove 7 hours, then slept for 5 hours and got up and ran my first, I don't know, it was around 28 miles, unsupported. It's 88 degrees, super humid. It rained all night, and I almost died. I remember I stopped to filter water and hung my water filter up. It was dead carp and everything in the water. It smelled terrible. And I remember, I don't know how long I was there, but I woke up. I passed out on the bank of the lake. If it wasn't for a low-hanging branch of muscadines, I might not be here today. But I finished that run, and I remember when I did, I was just like, what am I doing? Who am I proving something to? That I can run 30 miles for what? It just seemed stupid to me. And at that point, I said, fuck it, I'm going to route north and see some of my country family up there in Albany, Missouri. When I did that, I swung up further north than I had planned. And that's where I met Alex on Tinder, because she was up in Des Moines, Iowa.
Alex.
Now the stories can converge. Tell them what you were doing, honey.
I was trying to get help on my bus. That's what I was doing. And so I downloaded Tinder. I just kicked out my husband. And there was a floor heater in the back of the bus that I couldn't figure out how to pull out. And I was like, I need a man. Where am I going to get one? I was like, oh, Tinder. I downloaded it. And it had their little careers listed right at the top. And I was like, carpenter? Yep, need one of those. Diesel mechanic? Yep, need one of those. A joke popped up, and his profile picture was him and his brother. And they were underneath this waterfall. And I didn't know it was his brother at that time. But they were the happiest gay couple I had ever seen in my entire life. Anyways, so I had seen Joe. I'd seen that he was gay, but I had also seen that he had just converted his van. And he sounded smart. And I was like, perfect. He's not going to try and fuck me, but he'll know what to do here. And so I started talking to him, and he was super chatty, super nice. And I was like, yep, homosexual. Great. And 2 weeks later, I was on a plane to Washington, and he was not homosexual. And here we are.
And Dot, have a
Right? I don't know, ladies. I guess Tinder. Look for a carpenter. Look for.
I didn't know it went like that.
Get your man.
Yeah,
You're surfing Tinder wrong.
This whole thing, I had this whole plan to go live off in the woods with my kids in a bus. I was working in the ER during COVID, left there, and then went over to Family Medicine Administration. And I was so disenchanted. All I wanted to do was help people my entire life. Medically, I wanted to heal people. I was checkmarking these boxes on this fucking computer to make sure we met quality metrics, so we got paid by Medicare, and instead of actually caring for patients. And then my kids were coming home and telling me the shit that they learned from their friends or their teachers. And I was like, I got to get out. So kicked my husband out, kicked his kids out with him, got ready to sell my house, sold everything in it. I had 19 fucking garage sales over 6 weeks. It was insane. I accumulated just masses of stuff that I hadn't even touched in 10 years. I had to sell all of that, quit my job, pulled the kids out of school, and Joe popped up, and I was like, okay, 2 things are going to happen here. I was flying into Seattle, which I don't know if you're aware. Seattle and 200-mile radius around that area is the capital of serial killers in the United States. Over 50% of serial killers come from that one area.
You know, it's funny you say that, because when my daughter was living in Washington State, they were in the military base over there, Bremerton. And we would sit in the back porch, and I'd look at all those trees, and I said, oh my God, a serial killer could come here, get us, and no one would ever know. So see, confirm I wasn't crazy. Okay.
I made sure I sent my sister, my grandmother, everybody, all of the identification I could get. I was screenshotting Facebook, Tinder. This is the dude that's killed me. Like, I knew I was going to be murdered. Because then he has this whole story. He's running from the cops, and I was a multimillionaire.
That doesn't help.
Also, he's in this dirty ass, creaky van that I was like, I'm fitting to get off. Like, for sure. I knew this.
Why'd you come?
I have no
Right?
idea. I have no idea. No idea.
I
So then
sound messed up.
and I remember we got there, I got in the van, and I remember the first thing he said is I was like, sitting like this, I'm very nervous. And he was like, hey, why are you so tense? Loosen up. And I was like, oh, fuck.
He's like, I'm dead.
We drive to his house that he was working on there, and there's a bunch of Georgia rednecks out in the yard throwing shit. And so I went and hid in the bush, and I remember calling my sister, and I was like, this is not okay. And then it turned out those 5 days where I still can't explain what happened in those 5 days. Just a little tiny story time. One of the events within those 5 days, Joe kept doing this thing where we'd be driving, and he'd slam on the brakes, and he'd be like, we got to go back there. And he'd put it in reverse, and then we'd pull off to some weird random place. This time it so happened to be a little hitchhiker. He was not little. He was like 6 foot.
He was a Lithuanian basketball coach who had started backpacking in New Hampshire in May, and he was 6'10".
Oh my God.
His name was,
And so
I have a picture I should send to you so you can see. He was massive.
He's huge.
Huge.
So
And you're going back to pick them up. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, but you got to, all these places, it was like 4 in a row where something just said, hey, stop there. And I drove past it and stopped and put it in reverse in a highway and backed up.
So we picked him up. Prior to that, we had stopped at this little tiny grocery store. Tell that one.
Well, it was the same place. This is in a little town called CQ, a town of about 120 people. Out there, we're in the Olympic Peninsula now. You know that little tiny tip on the U.S. There, ain't but one road in and one road out. U.S. one. And we went in there, and I remember the dude. When we walked in, he just said hello, and I looked at Alex and I said, "How many times you walk into a gas station and the cashier has the voice of God?" And so we walked over and we grabbed some things. There was no sugar, no alcohol. It was like a little health food store in the middle of nowhere, a little gas station. It was a very small little establishment. But we got up there and he looked at me and just said, "Would you like me to read your ancient runes?" And I was like, I remember I said, "Yes, sir, read my runes." And so he took us back there and he did. He spread out a little cloth with a circle on it and all these quadrants. And we grabbed the little bone trinkets and threw them on there. And he read our ancient runes. He correctly identified both of our astrological signs. He said that Alex was getting a divorce. He nailed everything on the head. And one thing he had told me, he said, a new venture that you have just started is going to flourish. I had been on social media for about 3 weeks at this point. We've been back there 3 times since, and we reviewed everything that he wrote, and it was all scarily accurate. We actually have one of those books that we bought from him. We went back there right before we came to Costa Rica, and Terry had a stroke. He's had a stroke, and I think that was probably the last time we'll ever get to see him.
Wow.
But when we left after that weird experience, we were like, hey, let's bless this guy. So we bought like $150 worth of stuff, which is a lot to put in the van. We left out of there and we'd driven maybe a mile where we saw a hitchhiker. Hey, let's pick this guy up. And we picked up a hungry giant with all of this food. And I remember asking him, hey, are you hungry? We have a whole bunch. He was like, oh, yes, many people give me a ride, but very few offer me food. Yes, he ate all of it too.
Sure did.
I remember we offered him, we had some weed. We were like, "You smoke?" He's like, "No." "You want a beer?" "No." And later, where we were going, this little Aspen forest, we we're like, "Do you want some mushrooms?" He goes, "Sure." We're like, "Do you eat mushrooms?" He goes, "No, but it just seems like it would be appropriate." And so we did. We ate mushrooms with that guy and walked through the old growth forest at night with no flashlight for about 2 hours. It's pretty cool.
Okay.
Off
This is
shrooms?
This is where it gets
Yeah,
crazy.
your pupils are giant. You can see better at night.
We're in the
Okay.
basement and we're telling everybody's stories. And I was telling mine, childhood, mom, and I said I was from Iowa. And he goes, "I have something for you." And he digs around in his bag and he pulls out this little metal canister with a J inscribed on the side of it. And he was like, somebody else had picked me up while I was hitchhiking, and he just gave me this and a phone number and said that it needed to get to Iowa, and he knew I could get it there. Can you get it to Iowa? And I was like, well, it's a big state. Like, where? And he's like, So I took this. We went on with the rest of our trip. I got back home 5 days later, and I called this number. And I was like, "Hey, this is going to sound crazy." We picked up a hitchhiker who had been picked up by somebody else, and he had this little metal tin thing that I'm supposed to get to you, and you're somewhere in Iowa. I was like, "Where are you?" And so she gives me her address. She is 4 blocks from my house. 4 blocks from
Are
my house.
you serious?
I meet her and I deliver it to her. And she opened it on site, and it was from this guy that she had been talking to for the past 2 years, and it was a suicide note. She hadn't heard from him in 6 months.
He was already
my
dead.
God. Oh my gosh.
Didn't see that coming.
These are the types of things that happen to us.
And it was 5 days packed of that kind of shit.
We don't have time to go through all of it. That's just spiritual experiences.
Yeah.
Just crazy stuff.
Wow.
That